Well, for more on this, Tom O'Connor joins me now from New York. He is a senior foreign policy writer at Newsweek magazine. Tom, not a single Western nation has said it's prepared to send combat troops to Ukraine. So how far is NATO willing to go to defend a non-NATO country?
Yeah, I think it's a great question right now. And what we've seen consistently come out of Western capitals is these threats of sanctions, mostly offers of more weapons assistance. But it's really not really certain how much that those sort of arms could really make a difference, given the vast military imbalance on the ground between Ukraine and Russia. So right now it seems to be more symbolic, and certainly the economic sanctions could have devastating effects on the Russian economy. But past behavior and past actions, since going back to 2014 before, show that sanctions have not had have not proven a credible deterrent against Russian military actions or Russian behavior. So I think that certainly there is a question as to how much can NATO really do for a country that's not within NATO. I think that there's certainly the sentiment is there, but as far as the action, I think it's quite a limited tool set.
The U.S. president has mentioned 8,500 troops potentially being sent to the region. Is he serious about that? And do you think that if we do see a deployment, that would just further ratchet up tensions?
Yeah, I think that's certainly a risk over here, because what we're seeing is, while Ukraine, of course, is geographically and politically in some ways at the heart of this crisis, this is really about the broader architecture of Eastern European security over the past 30 years since the fall of the Soviet Union and in the post-Cold War era. And I think that seeing this deterioration right now, the adding of more troops could certainly risk, every action has a reaction, and what Russia could do to that could certainly just put things further at the brink over here. We spoke to the Russian ambassador just a few weeks ago, and he described Russia as being at the edge of a precipice right now with the way it's looking down looking at NATO missiles, defensive weapons, of course, but also other military actions in the post-Soviet sphere of influence. To Russia, that's very much viewed as a pressing national security threat. Of course, NATO says it's a defensive alliance, but we've seen NATO actions, of course, in Libya and other places. But at the heart of this right now is really the idea that Russia feels like its sphere of influence has been encroached upon in the post-Cold War era. So further U.S. troops there would certainly draw, I believe, a reaction from Russia, and it certainly could also just trigger the conflict in Ukraine itself if it's viewed by Russia as an escalation to that sense.
Yeah, Tom, all the signs seem to be pointing toward an invasion by Russia of Ukraine. But what should we be looking for from Putin and from Russia to indicate an imminent invasion?
Well, it's difficult to say, because there's certainly a sizable Russian military force amassed near the border. Not yet, I believe, at least, and this is just my analysis, to the point where it could sustain a land invasion. But of course, the Russian military has very different ways of inflicting pain upon Ukraine, whether it's cyber, whether it's through various other techniques, through infiltration. If Russia felt that it was time to do something, it could happen all at once. It could be rolled out slowly. I think that the military imbalance, it's very important here, because it's so in Russia's favor that I'm not sure that Ukraine would have the time to mount a defense. And when I mentioned the weapons being sent earlier from the West to Ukraine, these are very limited to small arms, perhaps anti-tank and anti-air missiles, but it's not enough to really push the meter in Ukraine's favor or really slow the Russian military. Any weapon systems that could do that would take months of training and would be easily detected by Moscow. And again, that there could trigger the actual Russian attack, and Russia would say that was a pretext for doing so.
All right, Tom O'Connor joining us from Staten Island, New York. Tom, thank you.
Thank you very much.